All right, today we're diving into one of the most profound questions in Christian theology. We're going to use a series of really fascinating biblical parables to unpack what they might tell us about salvation and, the very nature of the kingdom of heaven.
So here's the question at the very heart of our explainer today. Is salvation a single moment, like a ticket, you get punched once and it's good forever no matter what happens next? Or is it something more like a journey, a path that you actually have to walk and prove over the course of your entire life?
Before we can even try to answer that, the source material says we have to get a handle on the stakes. We really need to understand the incredible value of the kingdom of heaven itself. I mean, just how precious is this thing we're talking about?
Just listen to the scale of what's happening here. This merchant doesn't just trade some of his inventory. No, he liquidates his entire life for this one pearl. This story frames the kingdom not just as something valuable, but as the only thing with ultimate value. Everything else is secondary.
It's a staggering thought, isn't it? Seriously, just take a second and think about that. What, in this world, would you trade everything you own for? The source puts this question right up front to set the stage for everything that's coming next.
And this idea gets built on in another famous story, the parable of the net. So picture this. A huge net is tossed into the sea, which is seen as a symbol for the world, and it just scoops up all kinds of fish. This is basically a metaphor for the church, right? Gathering all sorts of people into its community.
But here's the crucial part. When they haul that net ashore, the job isn't done. The fish get sorted. The good ones are kept, and the bad ones are tossed out. The text argues this is a direct symbol for a future sorting within the church itself. It suggests that just being in the net, just being part of the community, that's not the final word. A sorting is still coming.
Okay, so if the kingdom is worth everything, and we know there's a clear line between who ultimately belongs and who doesn't, well, the next logical question is, what are the conditions? What makes a good fish a good fish?
This leads us to a very human moment. The disciples themselves ask this very question. They're wondering about status, about hierarchy. They're still thinking in earthly terms, They want to know the rules for getting promoted in this new kingdom.
And the answer they get just completely turns their expectations upside down. It's not about being the greatest, it's about being the smallest. It's about humility. And according to this source, that attitude of lowering yourself is the absolute foundation for the next critical condition, forgiveness.
And this point is driven home with the really stark parable of the unforgiving servant. A servant gets forgiven in impossible debt, a truly staggering gift of grace. But what does he do? He immediately goes out and attacks a fellow servant over what amounts to pocket change. Well, when the king finds out, he is enraged. He completely reverses the forgiveness. The pardon is officially canceled.
And the parable ends with this absolutely chilling warning. The message is pretty stark. The forgiveness we get from God is somehow conditional on the forgiveness we're willing to give to others. And this idea that a pardon can be taken back is what lights the fuse on a huge theological debate.
Because, think about it, if the king in that story represents God, and he takes back his forgiveness, that leads us straight to one of the most contentious questions in all of Christianity.
Can a person who has been genuinely saved, who has had that massive debt completely forgiven, somehow lose that salvation? Can that ticket to heaven actually be canceled?
So the source lays out the two main schools of thought here. On one side, you have eternal security, which you've probably heard called once saved, always saved. This view says that if you are truly saved, it's a permanent act of God that can never, ever be lost. If someone appears to fall away, well, that just proves they were never really saved to begin with. On the other side, you have conditional maintenance. This argument says salvation is a gift, absolutely, but it's a gift that can be forfeited. A real believer can use their free will to walk away from their faith and, just like that unforgiving servant, have their pardon revoked.
Now, the author of our source text is pretty clear about where they stand. They lean into that second argument. They propose that salvation isn't just a single declaration, but it's a whole process that actually requires verification.
They lay out this four-step journey. It all starts with confession. That's the moment forgiveness is granted. But then comes verification, where your life becomes the evidence. Your actions are the test that proves if that initial confession was real. That leads to confirmation, and only then is the final outcome of salvation secured.
So let's be super clear on this because it's a crucial point. The source isn't saying you earn your salvation by doing good things. That is a really key distinction. Instead, it's arguing that your actions are the necessary proof of your faith. A confession of faith that isn't backed up by a transformed life is, in this view,
considered a dead faith. So the actions don't save you, they prove you are saved.
So why does any of this matter so much? Why have this intense process of verification? Well, the source concludes by zooming way, way out to a truly cosmic scale, connecting this whole individual journey to the ultimate purpose of all creation.
The end game, according to this text, isn't just about rescuing individuals. It's about creating an entirely new reality, a new heaven and a new earth where suffering and pain and sin aren't just gone, but where they become impossible. And that's why this whole verification process is so essential. See the logic? From this perspective, letting someone into that perfect new world whose faith hasn't been proven by their life would risk reintroducing the very corruption that was just eliminated. The purity of that new creation depends completely on the proven character of everyone in it.
So, we're left right back where we started, with this one powerful question. Is faith a one-time declaration that secures a ticket? Or is it the beginning of a lifelong journey, one that has to be walked and tested and proven by the very way we live? The answer, according to this analysis, has implications not just for us as individuals, but for the final destiny of creation itself.